Hello kids, today we learn the art of manipulation, or more precisely, how developers manipulate you to make sure you keep playing. Disclaimer time! Not all of these are strictly bad for the player, but I felt it was mandatory to include them because otherwise you don't really get the full picture. It's in the best interest of any game developer to keep you playing for as long as possible. Their goal is to make money after all. And to turn you into a payer, you first need to be a player. So developers have developed many a manipulative trick to keep you playing and eventually make you start paying. The foundation of any game being successful is having a moment-to-moment gameplay that is fun and exciting. Yet very quickly players will tire of a game simply because it becomes repetitious, so developers have to find alternative methods to keep you playing. Some will be much more manipulative than others. The best way, for the player at least, is to add new content, or alter the game in a radical and fun way, but this costs a significant chunk of dough and is generally the shortest lived, whilst also taking the longest for the developers to produce. As such, developers can almost never keep a person playing solely through additional content alone, and as such, developers will resort to more underhanded tactics to keep you playing. The first method I'm sure you've all encountered. So you're casually sitting there playing your favourite game and then this pops up. After you have finished your necessary screaming and rage, you then have to think, why does the game have to screw me like this? And the reason is rather brilliant. The idea behind this method is to get you in the habit of coming back time and time again, even after you stop finding it fun. Think of it much like your morning caffeine hit. You don't really want to have to do it, but the habit is hard to break. So over the long term, you will spend more time playing than if they didn't time gate you at all. Of course, not all time gates are as obvious. Some are hidden rather well by being thematic. Apparently your apple tree needs time to grow, even though it is just pixels on a screen. Time gating does come with significant risk though. If you start time gating too early, people will think your game is trash and never return. But as it is basically free to time gate, almost all games will have some form of it. Even in titles where it doesn't seem to occur, if you look hard enough, you will find it. The second obvious method of making you play longer is the loose time gate. Similar to the strict time gate, but the player has a greater control over how long it lasts. In general, for most games this means a player is required to spend X amount of time performing repetitive, unengaging actions to get access to the game's premier content. This usually comes under the guise of collect X stones of power and make the big sword of power to kill the big bad. This model is the fundamental foundation of almost all RPGs. Spend time in the game doing some boring repetitive task to obtain upgrades to kill an enemy which you have no way to outskill. When you remove the unengaging content, you're usually left with very little, which by itself is not enough to keep the player engaged, and as such they have to resort to long, boring grinds to keep you playing. Now that we've covered the obvious methods, let's move on to the more hidden ones. One of the best of these is a ranking system, which on its surface seems like a rather good element of any competitive game, and it is. But to the developer, it is a simplistic way to improve the replayability of their game. Let's take a game like Hearthstone for example. For those of you who are unaware, Hearthstone is a card game where players build a deck and then battle against each other. A normal game takes about 5 minutes, and without a ranking system, the only goal you have to work towards is winning your next game, which very quickly begins to feel repetitious. At this point, players will believe they've beaten the game and claim that all their wins are because of their great skills, and their losses are due to the opponents drawing the right card at exactly the right time. For games with no obvious source of luck, players will instead blame their teammates or any other factors outside of their control. A ranking system, however, gives the player feedback on how well they're actually doing and provides the player a long-term goal to reach the top, which most players believe that they deserve to be in already. This encourages them to keep playing till they have proven that they're as good as they think. As in reality they're not, they will have to become more skilled, which takes time, and as such, this system can be considered a loose time gate with almost no certainty of success. But for the truly devious developers who know that progression in any skill-based system is slow, what they do is they ensure that all players are always slowly moving up, even if they don't deserve it. In Hearthstone, usually you gain 1 star for a win and you lose 1 star when you lose. However, if you go on a win streak, you gain 2 stars, whilst your opponent is still only losing 1. So over time, more stars are added into the system, so everyone will slowly have to go up. So ranking can really just be considered a loose form of time game with no guarantee of success. But the best part is, the player doesn't even see it as one because it hides its true purpose so well. Here is when we get into the truly manipulative tactics. It is a well-known phenomenon that players will experience a large hit of dopamine after a close win. As the walking bags of chemicals that we are, players will then become addicted to this natural high. So it's greatly beneficial to the developers to provide the players with lots of them. There are multiple ways to achieve this. If it is a multiplayer game, match teams together who are similar in skill. But this only sort of works because one side has to lose, and very rarely are the two teams matched with a small enough margin for it to be a close game anyway, due to outside factors, queue times, population size. For single player games though, the close win is an extremely powerful tool as it is completely hidden from the player with no indication of it occurring without purposely going searching for it. A notorious example of this is most racing games. The computer will always react to the player. If the player stuffs up, they will continue out of sight, then slow to a crawl. If you get massively ahead, they will speed up. In essence, that means there's 2 ways to lose: start the race and not play, or stuff up close enough to the finish line. It would be really obvious if the computer allowed you to win, as it would require it to come to an almost complete stop. This results in 2 major effects. The player will almost always win, filling them with that dopamine hit, and the beginning of every race being effectively irrelevant, as the computer will always make sure to keep up with you, which results in it being a different form of a loose time gate that makes you feel good that your time is being essentially wasted. Personally, I have to give this one a lot of credit. This method manages to scam you and make you feel good about being scammed. With more variables come more ways to subtly manipulate you. The same principle of the computer adapting to you can also be used in multiplayer games against the computer. WoW is notorious for this. Each player is assigned a secret competency score based on past performance. Bad players and then good players are then grouped together, ensuring that almost all players will achieve success, as in most queued content, only one competent player is required to carry the rest. This does 2 things. It gives bad players a dopamine hit thinking that they're the reason for the group's success, while managing to die over 9,000 times, whilst also ensuring that the triviality of the content is never obvious by having a full group of competent players. This technique does come with a significant drawback, as it adds a lot of time to matchmaking for groups, but this downside can be hidden. As groups require multiple roles, one of them will have an extremely long queue time. The final method is disappointingly simple: jealousy. Developers will match players with other players who have rare and difficult to obtain items, and then use that opportunity to show how powerful they are by matching them against far weaker opponents, massively overemphasizing the item's power. Bad players will then see it and think, if I get that item, I'll be just as good as them. But in reality, they'll still suck. For games where there's not an item barrier, this can also encourage players to become more skilled as they see what true skill is like. But in general, if a player can pass off their ineptitude as a result of not having the right item, bad luck, or horrible teammates, they will. To sum it up, every element of a game is meticulously crafted to keep you playing. Whilst many methods are plain and obvious to see, the truly effective ones are those you never notice. So next time you're playing your favourite game, remember to ask yourself, is this happening for my benefit or developers? And next time you experience that dopamine high, remember that this is just another tactic they use to keep you playing. And now I shall conveniently manipulate you into watching one of my other videos by making it really easy to click the link. Alternatively, if you wish to learn how to play the bells, I accept that too.